Rome did not fall asleep the night Gaius Caesar became emperor. It held its breath. Torches flickered along the marble corridors of the Palatine Hill, casting long shadows that clung to the walls like stains that would never wash away. Somewhere inside the imperial palace, laughter echoed, sharp, sudden, unhinged. The kind of laughter that makes guards tighten their grips on their spears and avert their eyes, praying not to be noticed. The man responsible was only 24 years old. The people called him Caligula, Lil Boots, a childhood nickname earned while parading through military camps dressed in miniature legionary sandals. But the boy who once smiled at soldiers had vanished. What remained was something Rome had never seen before and would never forget. This is not a story of rumor alone. It is not a simple list of scandals whispered by enemies. It is a descent, documented by Roman historians who watched in horror as power stripped away restraint, morality, and fear itself. Within 4 years, Caligula would turn the imperial palace into a stage for sexual domination, humiliation, and cruelty so extreme that even Rome, a civilization hardened by slavery, gladiatorial bloodshed, and public executions, recoiled. This is the story of 5 sexual atrocities that came to define Emperor Caligula. And before you think this is exaggeration, understand this. Nearly every ancient source, hostile and sympathetic alike, agrees on one thing. Something went terribly wrong. The story begins not with madness, but with worship. When Caligula took power in AD 37, Rome rejoiced. The long, suffocating reign of Tiberius had ended. The young emperor was a beloved son of Germanicus, a war hero adored by the people and respected by the legions. Crowds flooded the streets. Temples rang with prayers. Senators smiled again. For the first few months, Caligula ruled generously. He released political prisoners. He abolished certain taxes. He staged lavish games. Rome believed it had been saved. Then he fell ill. Ancient sources describe a severe sickness, possibly encephalitis, epilepsy, or lead poisoning, that left him bedridden for weeks. When Caligula recovered, those closest to him said his personality had changed completely. The kindness vanished. Paranoia replaced trust. Pleasure replaced restraint. And power replaced shame. The first sexual atrocity did not happen in secret. It unfolded in public, during banquets attended by Rome's most powerful men. Caligula would recline on his couch, sipping wine, eyes drifting across the wives of senators seated nearby. Without warning, he would rise, approach a woman, and lead her away, not discreetly, not quietly, but with deliberate spectacle. Moments later, he would return alone. Then he would describe her body. In detail, he would comment on her performance, her obedience, her flaws, her usefulness. Her husband was expected to listen, to smile, to applaud. Refusal was not an option. Roman law offered no protection against the emperor. A senator who protested risked exile, confiscation of property, or death. This was not mere lust. Roman elites had mistresses. Emperors had affairs. But Caligula turned sex into a public assertion of absolute dominance. He was not stealing wives. He was breaking men. According to Suetonius, Caligula would sometimes auction off women after these encounters, selling the sexual access he had already taken, as if their bodies were now imperial property. The message was unmistakable. Nothing in Rome was private. Nothing was sacred. Not marriage. Not honor. Not dignity. And this was only the beginning. The second atrocity cut deeper into bloodlines Rome held sacred. Caligula's sisters were not ordinary women. They were imperial princesses, descended from Augustus himself. In Roman culture, incest was taboo, whispered about among foreign kings, condemned in myth, feared as a sign of tyranny. Caligula did not fear it. He embraced it. Ancient historians report that Caligula engaged in sexual relationships with all 3 of his sisters, Agrippina the Younger, Drusilla, and Livilla. Whether all 3 accounts are equally accurate is debated, but Drusilla's case stands out. He did not hide it. He lived with her openly. He treated her as a wife. He reportedly took her to bed even while she was married to another man. When Drusilla died in AD 38, Caligula's grief was theatrical and terrifying. He shut down Rome. He ordered public mourning. He declared her a goddess, the first Roman woman ever deified. And rumors spread like wildfire. Was this love, obsession, or something darker? A belief that only his own blood was pure enough to share his bed? To Rome, this was sacrilege. To Caligula, it was entitlement. If the first 2 atrocities shattered social order, the third obliterated entirely. Caligula transformed the imperial palace into a brothel, not metaphorically, literally. According to multiple sources, Caligula converted parts of the palace into spaces where noble women were forced to work as prostitutes. He set prices. He collected payment. He kept accounts. Senators' daughters, knights' wives, women whose families had built Rome, reduced to commodities under imperial command. Some historians argue exaggeration here, but even skeptical scholars acknowledge that Caligula publicly prostituted elite women as a form of punishment and entertainment. Sex was no longer intimacy. It was currency. It was torture. It was theater. And Rome watched in silence, because silence meant survival. By now, fear ruled the city. But Caligula was not satisfied with fear alone. He wanted worship. Which brings us to the 4th atrocity, one that blurred the line between sexuality, religion, and terror. Caligula declared himself a living god, not symbolically, literally. He ordered temples to install his statue. He demanded sacrifices. And according to several accounts, he demanded sexual acts as proof of devotion. Priestesses were reportedly violated in rituals meant to honor his divinity. Women were coerced into sexual submission as a form of religious loyalty. To refuse was blasphemy. To submit was survival. Rome had seen divine emperors before, but only after death. Caligula demanded godhood while alive, using sex as both proof and punishment. This was no longer decadence. This was cultic abuse of power. And yet, the final atrocity eclipses all others because it reveals the ultimate truth about Caligula. He did not seek pleasure. He sought annihilation. According to ancient testimony, Caligula enjoyed forcing men to watch the sexual violation of their wives and daughters, not merely as humiliation, but as spectacle. He watched their faces. He listened to their breathing. He studied their silence. Some sources claim he ordered these acts specifically during public games or feasts, surrounded by music and laughter, amplifying the horror. The goal was not arousal. It was control. It was a destruction of the Roman male elite, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. And as the palace filled with whispers of terror, the question spread through Rome like a curse. How long before he turns on us all? Before we continue, ask yourself this, and leave your answer in the comments. Would absolute power corrupt you or reveal who you already are? By the second year of Caligula's reign, Rome no longer whispered his name. It avoided it. People spoke in half sentences. Eyes dropped when soldiers passed. Laughter in taverns stopped too abruptly. No one trusted walls. No one trusted servants. No one trusted their own families. Because under Caligula, intimacy itself had become dangerous. Sex, once a private indulgence of Roman life, had been weaponized. The fourth sexual atrocity did not simply involve coercion. It involved ritualized humiliation so precise, so methodical, that it bordered on psychological experimentation. Caligula began inviting senators and wealthy elites to elaborate banquets, events that initially appeared like a return to normalcy. Music played. Wine flowed. Servants glided across marble floors. For a moment, Rome dared to believe the nightmare had paused. Then the doors would close. Caligula would rise, smiling, and order selected women be brought forward. Not slaves, not courtesans, wives, daughters, sisters. He would announce their honor, their privilege of serving the emperor, and the men were forced to watch. Roman masculinity was built on control of household, lineage, reputation. Caligula attacked that foundation with surgical cruelty. He stripped elite men of the very thing that defined them. Some historians suggest exaggeration, but even modern scholars concede that forced sexual humiliation of political rivals was a known tactic in Caligula's court. The psychological damage was deliberate, because broken men do not rebel. The fifth atrocity emerged as Caligula's paranoia deepened. He became convinced that senators mocked behind closed doors, laughing at his godhood, his extravagance, his cruelty. So he responded the only way he knew how. He turned surveillance into intimacy. Caligula reportedly disguised himself and roamed brothels, listening to conversations. He questioned prostitutes about clients. He demanded names, secrets, betrayals. Then he punished those men, not with execution, but with sexual degradation. Wives were seized. Mothers were threatened. Daughters were leveraged. Death was quick. Shame lasted forever. This was terror perfected. And Rome began to crack. Guards whispered. Senators plotted. Even Praetorian Guard, sworn protectors of the emperor, grew uneasy. Caligula sensed it, which only made him worse. He began staging sexual spectacles, not just to humiliate, but to provoke, to dare someone to stop him. And eventually, someone did. On January 24th, AD 41, as Caligula exited a performance beneath the imperial palace, conspirators struck, knives flashed, blood hit marble, the god emperor screamed, and Rome exhaled. Caligula's death did not erase his crimes. It exposed them. As senators rushed to restore order, stories poured out from servants, guards, victims, and witnesses who had been silent for survival. Ancient historians began recording what Rome had endured. Suetonius, Cassius Dio, Tacitus, they disagreed on details, but not on direction. Caligula's reign had been a descent into sexualized tyranny. Some modern historians argue exaggeration, noting that many sources were hostile to him. And yes, Roman historians often dramatize moral decay to justify assassinations. But here's the problem. Even when accounting for bias, the volume of testimony is overwhelming. Multiple independent sources describe the same patterns. Public sexual humiliation, incestuous behavior, forced prostitution, eroticized domination. This was not rumor. It was reputation. And reputation does not form in a vacuum. The real horror is not just what Caligula did. It is what Rome allowed. Because every atrocity required silence. Every humiliation required witnesses who survived by compliance. Every violation was enabled by fear. Caligula did not fall because he was immoral. He fell because he turned immorality into policy. After Caligula's assassination, Rome tried to forget. His statues were destroyed. His name was erased. His memory was officially condemned. But trauma does not vanish with a decree. The survivors carried it. The empire remembered it. And history preserved it as a warning. Caligula stands as proof that tyranny does not always arrive wearing armor. Sometimes it arrives smiling. Sometimes it arrives seductive. Sometimes it arrives laughing, while it takes everything you thought was untouchable. Sex became his sharpest blade because it cuts without leaving visible scars. And that is why his legacy still chills us. Because Caligula did not invent cruelty. He simply proved how far it can go. When power answers to no one, if the story unsettled you, it should. Because history repeats itself, not in events, but in patterns. And when leaders treat people as objects, bodies become battlegrounds. Subscribe for more hidden horrors of the past. And remember, the most dangerous monsters are not born. They are crowned.